Hello and welcome to The Connected Generation. My name is Nikè Anani and I am your host. Here on The Connected Generation, we explore all things legacy wealth and legacy businesses, how you can build businesses and wealth that would have sustained impact not only over time, but also over space. And we invite guests from all over the world, both expert teachers and legacy business owners, to come on and share a thing or two on their journeys. And we have these conversations in an environment of authenticity, curiosity, and vulnerability. This week, I was joined by a powerhouse, Mrs. Mercy Aminah. Mercy currently manages Fiduciary Services Limited, a private client firm focused in Lagos, Nigeria, on energy, governance and compliance, capital markets and legal advisory, and trust and estates. Her work really is advising high net worth individuals and families on local and cross-border wealth management and private philanthropy. In this conversation, we unpacked common mistakes families and high net worth individuals make when thinking about estate planning. This was such a fascinating conversation, thoroughly educational, so helpful. Mercy really helped to break estate planning down and unveiled a lot of common pitfalls people jump into, how to plan well. So I definitely recommend you listen to this. Thank you and enjoy. Hello, Mercy. Welcome to The Connected Generation. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much, Nikè. My pleasure. I'm so happy that we could agree and pin up a time to get this done. So really, all the pleasure is mine.
Yes, indeed. You're a passionate corporate solicitor, trust and estate practitioner, governance and sustainability enthusiast. So you come with a lot of expertise that I think will be so valuable for listeners. But before we dive into, I guess, your expertise, I'd love to learn more about how did you get here? Like, what was the journey Mercy went through to get to this endpoint?
Okay, so I started my professional career. So basically, I'm a lawyer. So I was called to the Nigerian bar, and I just chose from the outset not to go into litigation. I wanted to do business law. So right about after like 1 year of working in a full-fledged law firm, I was now able to get into business law, which was what I wanted to do. But that meant that I was going to have to get into a corporate setting. So that's what I did. And the corporate setting I got into was an investment banking firm. So that's really how it all started. And at that time, at the time that the business was just starting up, so we were more or less like pioneer staff, and they kind of just fitted what I wanted to do, which was the business law aspect of practice and not necessarily any other thing else. So started investment banking and with a focus on wealth management. At the time we were talking about, which was 2009, it hasn't caught on. Like now, everywhere you go, you see, wealth management. Everybody's everybody's having one wealth management package or the other for you. That wasn't really how it was. It was just buying and selling of shares. Do you understand? Even things like bonds, and it was just a select space of people that knew about those instruments. But right now, it's pretty much mainstream. Everybody can go online, you can read it up and all that. So I started with investment banking and wealth management services. And part of what we were going to do was to also be able to establish family offices, get into trust and everything. So that was really what my introduction was into that space. So I kind of just took it on. And over the years, I had to do different things that were related to wealth management, that were related to estate planning. And when we eventually set up the local trust business in Nigeria I was also one of the pioneer staff that kind of just propelled it and did all the registration and all. So that's really how I got into the space. And at the point, it became imperative that you know what, even if you're going to be dealing with local clients, you really need to understand what the global picture is. At that point in time, I knew that I needed to
Right.
get a lot of, I needed to go out of, out of this jurisdiction to get to understand what the global picture with trust, estate planning, family wealth advisory, and that whole space. I needed to get that learning. So that's what I did. So I did a lot of courses, whether it was TEP, whether it was FFI, just name it, within this entire space. And also what made it a lot more rewarding was, as I was going through that process, there were also clients that wanted to get more value for how they were going to plan their estates, how they were going to sort out their businesses, how they were going to that whole, so the whole advisory that comes up with being able to have intergenerational wealth, and you have seamless transfer processes and a lot less headache. That was really how it was bettered, and I became really more entrenched in it. So really, pretty now, I just kind of, it's pretty what I do Monday, all day, all week. That's really what I do. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. I guess I'd love to learn a little bit more about estate planning, particularly for high net worth families. What are, I guess, the common mistakes you're seeing amongst these families that they're making with respect to their trust and estate planning?
Okay, so so for high net worth individuals, I think one of the common things, or one of the common thread that kind of just weaves through, if you are speaking as an advisor, is that when you have a matriarch and a patriarch, more often than not, these matriarch and patriarchs have done it all. They've seen it all, quote and unquote, and so they are in the driving seat. So that control bit, that's what you see. So you always have them wanting to drive the conversation. You always want them wanting to be the ones to determine when to start, how to start, what are the things that they want to do, and you would need to really have a client that is well exposed, and open to being able to say, you know what, I think this is the path that would best fit, and not necessarily where you're looking at it from or where you're thinking. So the conversations are getting easier by the day, by the times, because this is 2022. So conversations that were really, really like attracting. I mean, when you tell somebody set up your estate plan, I mean, in 2000, in the 2010s and all that, you're almost invoking death on the person. But now, with the way society has changed, with the way the world as we know it has changed, it's become imperative that if you do have assets, you want to enjoy that, you want to ensure that you arrange your affairs. So the times are helping. The circumstances that families, the patriarch, the matriarchs find themselves, the examples that they've seen in also their colleagues or their acquaintances also having those challenges of not arranging their affairs. So it's kind of just coming together and helping. But one of the key things is that families of wealth, high net worth individuals, they don't want you to tell them what to do. It's very rare for them to say, you know what, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to just allow you the expert. They always have what they want to do. I mean, just recently, I had to walk through with a client, a family that, I mean, it wasn't even the patriarch or the matriarch. Though they were already resigned to the fact that, you know what, we are going to leave this earth, and we are going to go to a place beyond. We have this asset. We want our children to enjoy it. So no contest about, okay, do you have other children, or are there other people that are going to come to lay claim on this asset? But you have the children resolute on, we want to do it this way. This is the vehicle we want to use. We want to use this. And you're asking yourself, on what basis are you, on what they, and nobody wants to hear. They just want to do that. So that is really what you find out that people already, they will go online, they would read materials, and they will just say, this is what I want to do. So even when you come and say, you know what, for certain type of asset, this is what you should look at. For certain types of assets that you have, or certain types of situations or circumstances that you have, this is what you should do. They come with so much force that, you know what, this is what we want to do, this is what we've discussed that we want to do, and no matter what happens, this is what you should get done for us. So that's really one of the key things you find with families of wealth or high net worth individuals. They really do come with a set mindset. So it does take a lot of conversations. It does take a lot of prodding. It does take a lot of time for you to say, okay, not a problem, we can get this done, but can we also have a conversation around this, around that? And let's see if at the end of the day we come back to what you are saying you want, or other things would have happened, or other things would have come to light, and you would have had a change of mind. So I think that's really one of the key things. But like I always tell people, you wouldn't have a high net worth individual as a high net worth if the person hasn't gone through the rounds, if the person hasn't exhibited those character traits that ordinarily, when you come to the point of when they want to arrange their affairs, they are exhibiting. So it's just natural. It just comes with the terrain. So what you do is you need to understand it as an advisor, that you are going to have these situations. So why don't you just work with the clients and make sure that at the end of the day, you are setting up a structure that works for them.
That's so true. A lot of successful wealth builders, entrepreneurs have strong personalities, and that's really what's gotten them there. Quite dominant forces. Now, I'm thinking through estate planning, putting your affairs in order. Who leads that process? Say, for instance, you've got children involved, adult children who may be concerned about the estate planning or just general structuring and planning, but are facing these strong personalities in their homes. How do they navigate that? From your perspective as the advisor, who should be leading this process? What, in an ideal world, should this process look like? Is it just the matriarch, patriarch talking to the advisor? Do you involve the next generation? What should this look like in an ideal world?
Okay, so in an ideal world, I would always support that the patriarch like kind of lead this conversation. I would always support it. And the singular reason why I would support that is because everybody tends to conform. It's not necessarily because you want conformity, but it's just because you don't want chaos when you are in that process. You don't want chaos. You want to set up a process that from the outset, everybody can sit around the table. It will be civil with each other, and we will get to the point where there will be consensus for us to move ahead. So when you have the children leading the conversation or driving that process, or the next gen, more often than not, it does lead to chaos because everybody has fantastic ideas. So you have a situation where somebody just read up something, a friend of his just shared something. Oh, this was what my friend's father did. This is what my friend's mother did, or this is what I heard that somebody in my school did, or something like that. So you want to manage that whole process so that it doesn't unravel even before the whole thing starts. So I like the conversation, the process of the estate planning.
Right.
Let it be championed by the person that owns the assets, or the person that generated the assets. So whether it's the patriarch, the matriarch, let them be the one championing it. But at the same time, you as the advisor, you should know that this is not really for them because they are going to pass away. So you're setting up something for that would outlive them. That's the whole essence. You're setting up something that will outlive them. So that structure you're setting up, that plan you're setting up, can the children live in it? Can you as an advisor, by the time events have occurred, would that same structure be valid? So that's really where the expertise comes into play. But really, to have a seamless process, the processes are never seamless when it comes to estate planning. That's given. But to have a seamless process, you want to ensure that the wealth generators themselves are the ones driving it. Then you now bring other family members into it, and you start asking a lot of whys. So when you have the patriarch or the matriarch stipulating things, you're constantly asking why. Then you have your interviews that you have with every family member. You have your interviews that go around all the family members that have been identified, either they've been identified as beneficiaries or they've been identified as people that have significant interest in what is being set up. So you interview everybody and you get a broad picture. Then you also try to have a meeting where all the key elements that are uniform across board, you're speaking about it. Then when it comes to the variances, the outliers, you're also noting them so that they can go back with it, or they can come back and say, oh, it's fine, we are okay with that. But that's how the process should be if you really don't want to start up with having a chaotic situation in your hand.
Really helpful. You mentioned earlier that a lot of the time you're faced across the table from people that have very strong ideas as to how, what should happen based on what they've seen, what their friends have done, so on and so forth. What are the dangers and risks that they may face in taking that approach, as opposed to being guided by the experts? What may they not be seeing that may transpire as a result of implementing that which they've desired and asked you to do?
Okay, so so you have a lot of people that just feel that this is easy. I mean, setting up, how hard can it be for me to set up my estate plan? I mean, how hard? I've set up businesses, I've managed businesses, I'm a chairman of so and so different companies. My children too are also executive directors, and they have and they can lead things, they can drive things and all that. And when they come with such forceful positions, what you want to do is to kind of take a step back and say, okay, you know what? Let's agree on how we want to play this out. But one of the key things that you find that or the key mistakes that people make is that there's no one size fits all when it comes to estate planning. Arranging your affairs, who do you want to give your assets to, what have you been doing, what have you lived by all through your life, and how would the way you've lived your life affect how you want to distribute your assets. What are those things you did that that is synonymous with you, people know about? If anything happens to you today, is that going to go? So a lot of people will say, oh, I have clients that will say, oh, they give to their churches for harvest. You understand? So if they are no longer there, would the children, most of these kids that we are talking about, some of them within the Nigerian context, they're not even in the country. They're not in the country. They went abroad, they studied, and they decided to start their families over there. So they are overseas. And you have some how will I put it, legacies that you've built up for yourself locally in Nigeria.
Right.
So there is no connection. There is absolutely no connection. So it is about knowing that it is not what I've had clients that are in the US that have their children in the US basically in the US, and they'll be asking you some concepts that you know that obviously it doesn't work within the Nigerian context. It doesn't even work within even the African context, because those are
Can you give examples of
they are
that?
specific laws. So somebody is so an example of it would be that so an example of it would be that somebody is telling you about a living will, like is a living will. So
Right.
what we do for example in Nigeria, or maybe in like Anglophone speaking countries, by virtue of the common law and the English received law and all that, would be living trust. You understand? Intervivors trust. So, and that's very separate from talking about a living will. You would have conversations around power of
Right.
attorney. Like the way power of attorneys are construed in the US is very different from the way they are construed in
Right.
Anglophone speaking countries. You understand? So you have, and most times you find out that when clients are coming with a US law, you find out that the US has about 52 states or thereabout. Each of these states do have their different estate planning legislation that have been put in place for those states. So
Right.
you might really be talking about a state, maybe you're looking at one of those US states, and it doesn't even apply in the next states, except maybe like is a law that has a
Mm.
federal application, then you can talk about it. So when you do have these things, you have to just ask you, so you just have to kind of smile and say, okay, what do we now do? So what do we do now? Do we resign ourselves? I mean, there are different ways. They will tell you directed trust. Now, if a client tells you in the UK, in the US, directed trust, there are legislations that allows you to have a directed trust. There are legislations in place. In Nigeria,
Mm.
we don't have those legislations. You understand? Or it's even when you go offshore, you probably have offshore legislations that allow you to have very robust estate planning structures that you could put in place, that ordinarily if you were
Right.
to have those structures under a common law system or even the received betrich law system, it's not going to work. So when you have people that are coming with those things, you just kind of
Mm.
just chill, you smile, and you let them know that, okay, so these assets, the best thing that can happen is maybe we should think about selling those assets. Maybe we should think of getting people in to come. We have a liquidity event, and we now move those assets offshore, such that those legislations that you are so
Mm.
vocal about, those legislations that you are very passionate about, they can now guide those assets. But if those assets are landed assets in Nigeria, if they are landed assets sitting in anywhere, or they are instruments here that a patriarch or a matriarch has purchased, it probably might not work. So what you want to do is see how you can have a liquidity event. And that liquidity event now enables you to now move
Mm.
those assets, move the funds to those jurisdictions, and you can set it up. You understand? But as it is,
So
with
true.
what you're proposing, is probably not going to work. So that's really wanting to say, oh, this is what and I've had clients that they work in investment banks in the US. So they really do come with very sophisticated, very wonderful, technical, and you're like, okay, fantastic. I like this. I like what they are trying to do, because it puts value back for the clients. The client is in the driving seat. The family can
Right.
understand what's happening, but it does not necessarily mean that if you bring, you can reciprocate it here in Nigeria. You might not be able to reciprocate it here. You understand? It will not work because we don't have the
Mm.
enabling laws to, just like you have it over there in the US. You don't have it here. So you have to look for other ways to
Mm.
be able to ensure
Mm.
that if the key objective is succession planning and being able to transfer
Mm-hmm.
assets seamlessly, you now look for what are the next best alternatives that you could use, while ensuring that the structure you're talking about is watertight and serves the purpose of the client.
Mm. That's a wonderful answer. And I guess is to highlight to families just how complicated estate planning is, particularly when you have multi jurisdictions. And like you said, if a number of these rising gens are abroad in the US and the UK, and through their professional work, they're getting exposed to different structures, thinking that they can just bring these copy paste into Nigeria or whichever jurisdiction, it may not apply because every jurisdiction has its different laws and guidelines and what is permissible and so on and so forth. So it requires a lot of education on the part of the client to really understand the nuances and the peculiarities that go alongside that. I guess as you were talking, I was reflecting upon what about there's a whole bunch of I can't remember where I was reading it, but it was something like I think 70% of high net worth families haven't of generation one haven't engaged in estate planning at all. And I was just thinking, what if thinking to speak to that family, to educate them on the benefits, particularly of estate planning. Maybe you alluded to kind of failure stories that a number of your clientele have seen with respect to estate planning. Perhaps can you paint a picture of what's the likely outcome of their assets, their income, of their businesses, should they not engage in any estate planning?
Okay, that's true. So that takes us right down to what are the benefits of estate planning. So one of the key things that estate planning enables you
Mm,
to do is to be on the driving seat. That's and really, if you've been on the driving seat of everything you've done, you've collaborated with others, you've been able to acquire these assets, and you've done so well for yourself. Now, you don't want to get to the point where there's an end of life situation and you are not in that driving seat. It can be pretty much devastating, both for yourself and for those that you're leaving behind. Because more often than not, the people will be used to you being in charge, used to you being doing the needful. So just having an unplanned event happen and everything is in disarray is not something that it will probably be alien to those family members. So that's why estate planning is very important, especially when you do have assets and they are of significant value. It's very important. It puts you in the driving seat. Now, it allows
mm,
what
mm, mm,
another key thing is if you don't have a plan, fantastic. The problem is that the government has a plan for you. So if you don't have a plan for your assets, if you
mm,
don't have a plan to who gets what, the government already has a plan. So there's a default provision, there's a default set of laws, there's a default set of regulations that guides what happens to your assets when you don't have a plan. And even when you do have a plan, depending on the type of plan you have, there is also a default set of laws that also guides it. So you need to be asking yourself which one serves my
mm,
purpose very well. Which one is the best for enhancing the value of my assets and also ensuring the seamless transfer of those assets. So really, it puts you in the driving seat.
mm,
It takes away from it takes your family, it takes you and your memory, your beautiful loving memory away from the horror stories of how your family will have to be going around trying to ask, okay, my father had this, my father had that, or we understood that he had these shares, or we understand that. No, estate planning enables you to collate those assets. You are able to identify them, you are able to collate them, you're now able to understand, okay, what's the best way for me to transfer this asset to those that I love. Um, Another thing that estate planning allows you to do is that when you have children that are disadvantaged and you want to have special care for them because you won't be there to command the respect that people would use to take care of those children. So if a patriarch and a matriarch has a child that is challenged in one way or the other. When they are here, they can direct every other person to do the needful. But when they are not here, what happens? Everybody is like, okay, so what? So how is that my business? So when you have those kind of situations, when you have children with special needs and you have significant assets, and you know that you just plan for them, because really estate planning is about planning for the worst case scenario. You're not doing your estate plan because you are thinking is the best case scenario. If it was a
yeah.
best case scenario, you will just leave, you will just go, and all that. But estate planning is more or less like a worst case scenario thing. If everything goes awry, this is the basic minimum that I've put in place to ensure that at least my legacy, my assets are in the right hands and with the people that I love, and that there will be continuity of whatever it is that I love doing in my life, and also what they also what other values that they've picked up from me. So that's really so it enables you to take care of yourself. So there are times when I've had a conversation with a colleague, a senior colleague at the time, about the fact that children, the children of a patriarch, because I mean when you know that your parents are wealthy and you just have that, and you grow up with that mentality, and all of a sudden probably things are not adding up, and your father probably you getting to understand that you are not living up to expectations, all the all the things that have been done for you, you haven't really taken the best and all that. So you now have children that have turned against their parents. Now, when they've turned, what do they want? They want you to, they want to see the demise of the parents. And in seeing that demise, what they want is to have direct access to those assets. So there are situations where you would have those children really hold you as the patriarch or as a matriarch bondage. They would hold you bond until probably you sign some things, or until probably the person dies or something, so that they can have easy access to those assets. So first and foremost, the estate plan is really to serve your interest. At the point of incapacitation, when you can't make decisions and everything and all that, what have you put in place? You understand? So what have you set up in place to take care of you and take care of those that you love? So because so that's really it, because there are different circumstances that people find themselves in, and you probably would never have imagined that that would kind of be the circumstance that even you or anyone related to you would be. So that's really what estate planning allows you to do. It allows you to remove having external parties come in and feed on your assets. So imagine that you have warring children, warring factions of the family. What happens is that those assets, nothing happens to them. So they will tell everybody to go back to the status quo. So whatever the status quo was, if it was status quo of, okay, daddy or mommy was the one managing these things, and they didn't leave it out, they didn't plan it out or give it to anybody, it means that those assets are just going to be seated there. They are going to be at waste, or they are going to just not appreciating or having any value added to them. So those are the things that you want to prepare against. Those are the things that you want to plan against. Ensuring that at the end of time, at the end of this whole journey here, you would have done your best to protect your legacy, to ensure that your assets are in the hands of those that you want to have it, and to ensure that your loved ones are taken care of.
No, I'm still stuck at, if you don't have a plan, guess what? The government has a plan for you. And I think
The
that's
government has a
just
plan,
so true.
absolutely. And they
And
will be so
really a lot.
happy to help you execute
Yeah,
the
like
plan. I
it's
mean,
so
like,
true.
it is a business. They will help you to execute the
Right.
plan. Yeah.
Right. So that's one for a lot of people to think about. And then the other instances that you gave as well are so poignant, like, and so, like, you really need to stop and think through what will happen in the event of incapacitation, what will happen with you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
children with special needs and all the other examples you gave. And I guess where I'm left with is, if a listener is from a family enterprise and knows that there's no estate plan, what are the practical steps? Where should they start from to prepare to engage somebody like yourself? Because I don't believe that all the work is on a third party consultant. There's some preparatory work that they would have to do as well on their side. And what do you recommend that should be?
Okay, so for clients like, you would want to now say, okay, what are your concerns? So you have to, as an high net worth individual, someone with significant assets, and varied family considerations, or varied family situations, you have to ask yourself, what are your concerns? What are those concerns that you deal with on a day-to-day basis? Is it your wife? Is it your children? Do you have a drug issue within the family? Do you have a special needs child? Do you have aunties and uncles that you've taken care of all this while? Are you actively participating, whether in your church activities, and all that? So you want to ask yourself, what are those concerns you have? And if you were to write like a love letter to yourself with respect to the assets you own, and the values that you've lived your life by, and what you want others that are coming behind you when you are no longer here Just imagine that you're no longer here. What story do you want to have written about you, and what circumstances do you want to play out? What is that scenario you want to play out? What would you love to see? So you start writing it down. You start penciling it down. I mean, like, start writing it. So those concerns, those different things that probably over the years you've neglected and you haven't really followed through on. But at this point, you know that, you know what, I'm not going to be in this life forever. I need to come to terms with it, and I need to now say, okay, what now happens when I'm no longer here, and who takes charge, who gets what. Are these assets indivisible such that they would always remain within the family? The legacies, the philanthropy that I'm known for, would it stop? Should it continue? How do I set about it? What do I do? And all that. So you start addressing your concerns. So once you start, so we call it a letter of wishes. So it's almost like a love letter to yourself when you're writing down, penciling down your letter of wishes to say, this is my wishes when I'm not here. I want A to be well behaved. I want this, I want that. You just start like just having that moment where all the things you want to happen when you are not here, how the world should be better, how whatever it is, you just start it. So those are when you start addressing your concerns and the whole varied issues that you've lived with or that you're probably experiencing as the patriarch or as the matriarch. Then after that, you now want to now say, okay, what are those assets? You want to identify it. You need to have a spreadsheet. Where are they located? Who are the directing minds? And all that. So you want to collate that whole information. This doesn't have to be like a 24 hours, like it happens like that. No, it's just you being conscious, you being intentional. So the intentionality of it is what is very important. You need to be intentional about it. You cannot have an estate plan that is just that you are passive about. Then the whole purpose is defeated. So there has to be a lot of intentionality about it. So to be able to ensure that the objectives that you are seeking to achieve, which is harmony, family harmony, asset preservation, goodwill, just that continuity, you understand, that whole, so that when your name is mentioned, it will evoke sentiments of good. It would invoke, your family would always want to make sure that your legacies are enshrined and they are doing all the needful. So you could have your letter of wishes, you could have your assets identified, and you start collating it. After that, then you're now looking at who are the best experts that I should speak with. Then you probably be looking out for firms that this is all they do. I mean, and they've had similar situations that they've worked with, or similar families, or situations that you know that at the end of the day you are going to be able to have a plan that just takes that is rounded, and really takes cognizance of all the concerns that you have. So really, in setting up an estate plan, what you don't want to do is, there are clients that will tell you, oh, I have a childhood friend that is a lawyer, so I'm going to go back to my childhood friend, and I would speak to him. I'm sure he knows what to do, and all that. And even if safe, I'm even going to make my childhood friend my executor. Now, what we tell clients is, how are you sure that that person will not predecease you? How are you sure that person is not going to die before you? So you're already making family members, aunties, uncles, you're making them your executors. And this is 2022. I mean, like, there's so much that has happened in the world. We see people go to their offices, and the next thing you hear is that, oh, they were burnt out and they were admitted, and this is what has happened. So you just want to make sure that you're speaking to the right professionals, you're speaking to the right experts, and that you are telling your story as it is. You are being transparent, you are being open, and you are desiring for the best for everyone. So yeah, so that's really how the process would work. There has to be like a personal catharsis that allows you to pour out what you want to do, what you're seeking to achieve, and what you would want the scenario to be when you are not here. So yeah, so that's really how you start. Then you cannot underestimate the services of the professionals. You cannot. So that whole mentality of we can do it ourselves. There are some things you can do yourself. Yes, you can. I mean, if you do have the time, you can do your gardening yourself. If you do have the time, you could probably make your bed yourself, or you could decide to make lunch or dinner or
Right.
something, maybe from a YouTube page or something that you could look at it or whatever. But when it comes to estate planning, if you want to do it right, you need to ensure that you have the professionals doing it for you.
So true. And something that struck me as you were talking was that quite often when we talk about estate planning, we talk about assets. What happens to liabilities?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. That's a very, very interesting one. That also comes in as well.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Yes. There are times when there are liabilities even attached to those assets. There are times when there are
Right.
liabilities attached to those assets. So it all comes about you taking stock of what you own, what you owe, and how you want to go about it going forward. So that's it. Yeah, absolutely true. It's not necessarily all about. But if you even
Yeah.
look at
And
it,
what
I mean, if
happens?
you look at the definition of assets, I mean, as well. I mean, whatever you have as an asset, you would have taken note of the liabilities. So, yeah.
Yeah. What happens if the liabilities, things for those that are from Africa or Nigeria, the exchange rate is, unfortunately in a downward trend. The value of the assets could go down significantly. You may have liabilities, maybe bank debts that are accruing and compounding at 20 whatever percentage. What happens if upon transfer we have a net liability situation? How do you as an estate planner, or I guess like what steps can you take to protect the family and the legacy in that instance?
Yeah, so when it comes to that, I mean, like, if you are hemorrhaging, I mean, it's like if the assets that the family is holding
Mm-hmm.
on to are really like, um, I mean, they're just it's just not tenable. What you want to do is, how can you come in and get the family to renegotiate all the positions they have? And end of the day, another thing is this: how can you what are the other benefits that you could take advantage of? Could you look at, if you cannot speak to, for example, if you have a bank loan, the easiest that you would think would be, okay, you know what, you probably would want to do a renegotiation with the bankers. But even if that is not even the situation, do you want to now look at, I mean, what are the bankruptcy protection benefits that you could use, such that at the end of the day
Right.
there is a stop. There's a way in which not all the assets would just be lost. So you would probably need to have, so when you come in and see those kind of situations, you are looking at what structures were they limited liability companies, were they sole proprietorship, were they, so if they are limited liability entities, you know that is limited to the shareholdings. If they are by guarantee, you know that, okay, so these are by guarantee entities, and what is the value of the guarantee. If it's a sole proprietorship, you know that, come on, it's going to hit everything. So you want to look at the structure the person has, that those assets are head in. Then you now want to look at the laws of the land, the corporate laws of the land, and see what are the protective measures you can take, such that you can at least manage the liability side of it, and if possible, allow the family, allow the assets to be able to recoup. I mean, like, so that they can have like a breather, and they can now be able to see how they can build back those assets, or how they can work around those assets, or if they even need to get in new investors to come in and they take a significant haircut with respect to the shareholding, especially if the business can still remain as a going concern and all that. So there are different ways in which you can look at it. And fortunately for us, if you're speaking in Nigeria, the 2020 CAMA that we have, Companies and Allied Matters Act, does provide robust provisions for you to kind of shepherd your entity, shepherd that company, shepherd that corporate
Mm.
structure in such a way that if there's still life in it, it doesn't have to die, and you don't have to lose those assets. So depending on what the assets are made up of, they are, so you come in as an advisor and you try to work with the family. If they have the bankers, you also work with them. If they have the investment managers, you work with them just to understand what it is. And if you do have a negative position at the end of the day, what you want to do is to let the family know that it will probably be a criminal offense, or for them to continue to rely on those assets if those assets were actually supposed to either be maybe for payment of taxes or payment of lending and every other thing. You just want to ensure that they are on the right side of the law and they are taking advantage of every provision of the law to protect the assets, to protect their position, and not to have as much losses as ordinarily would have been the case.
No, that's so helpful. So essentially, if there are liabilities, it still pays to go down the estate planning route and to think and make considered decisions based on, like you said, what are the bankruptcy protections? Are there any assets that are ring fenced? And so on and so forth. There is a, so to speak, it's not a hopeless situation. Estate planning is still worth going down the route of. Awesome. Mercy, thank you. This has been so rich and so educational. I've learned so much from you. If anyone would like to get hold of you and reach out to you, how best can they reach you?
Okay, so they can. Our website is there, Fiduciary Services Limited. So I mean, you could also check me up on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. I think that's more or less like the easiest way to reach me. Or you send an email to contact at Fiduciary Services Limited. So it's just as pronounced. The limited is ltd.com. So you would always have someone attend to the emails, and if it's on LinkedIn, you always have me respond um, to the messages and all. So it would be good to kind of talk more to people, share more details, and share more about what I do. I absolutely love talking about what I do, so I can't get tired of it. So I would really love to engage more.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. I love that conversation. And frankly, what really jumps out at me, like I mentioned in the ending, was when she said, if you don't have an estate plan, the government has one for you. And that was really, it's so true. They really do. In every jurisdiction, they have a plan for you. But is that your plan? Is that the plan that you really want? Is that, does that achieve your liquidity goals? Does that achieve your business goals? Does that amplify, worsen family dynamics in terms of the order in which these assets, who they go to? Quite often, probate is a very lengthy process in different jurisdictions. Is that really what you want? So being proactive around estate planning is really advisable. The second thing is, I think Mercy was alluding to working with very strong-minded individuals and families that have a strong sense of this is what needs to happen and you just implement. I think it's important to give room for the trusted advisor to guide and advise and utilize their deep wealth of expertise and knowledge. And oftentimes, estate planning and tax planning are not things that can just be done at the whim. Quite often, we families, we can be quite impatient. We can be, we can not dedicate as much time as is required or desired to estate planning. And so quite often we can come with a sense of this is urgent, but to do it well, there's a lot that needs to be thought about. Jurisdictions, tax residencies, the assets in place, your goals, there's so much to be thought about. And the third thing that I would say is estate planning isn't just like you've done it and you're all good. It's a continuous process that needs reevaluating at key moments and periodically. And key moments that I would advise is like, for instance, when you have new members of a family joining through marriage, or when you have relocations to new jurisdictions, or when you have new assets coming into place. These are key times to think, okay, we need to revisit the estate planning. Is it still fit for purpose? Can it be structured in a different way to optimize? Have we considered all factors into play? And so on and so forth. So those would be my nuggets of wisdom. And yeah, Mercy is phenomenal at what she does. I also really loved when she unpacked liabilities. Like I mentioned, I find that in the space, there's so much talk about assets, but frankly, we also have liabilities. Like, what happens to them? What's the process behind that? And to start to have conversations amongst your family and also your trusted advisors as to how to manage those liabilities as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, take good care and God bless you.